Look at any city's most controversial building, the one people either passionately defend or desperately want to tear down. Chances are it's a hulking monolithic structure of raw, unfinished concrete, with massive geometric forms and a sense of imposing, undeniable presence. This is brutalism, and it's perhaps the most misunderstood architectural movement of the 20th century. To many, it's cold, oppressive, and ugly, a blight on the urban landscape. But to its defenders, it's a powerful, honest, and profoundly humane philosophy built in concrete. So, what is the truth behind these concrete giants? Where did they come from, and why do they inspire such strong emotions? We're going beyond the surface to explore the origins, the engineering, the social ambitions, and the complex legacy of an architecture that was never afraid to be bold, raw, and unapologetically itself. The term brutalism doesn't come from the word brutal, but from the French phrase béton brut, meaning raw concrete. This was the signature material of the movement, popularized by the godfather of modern architecture himself, Le Corbusier, with his Unite D habitation in Marseille. This building wasn't just an apartment block, it was a vertical city, with shops, a gym, and a rooftop school, all encapsulated in a monumental form where the concrete was left exactly as it came from the formwork, imprinted with the wood grain and all its imperfections. This honesty of materials was a core tenet of brutalism, the idea that a building should not hide its structure or its construction process behind paint or cladding. What you see is what you get. The bones of the building are its skin. But achieving this aesthetic was an immense engineering and construction challenge. The quality of the concrete had to be perfect, with a precise mix designed to avoid honeycombing and discoloration. The formwork, the temporary molds into which the concrete was poured, had to be exquisitely crafted, as every seam and knot would be permanently recorded on the building's surface. A pro tip from historical construction is that the stunning board-formed concrete in buildings like Paul Rudolph's Yale Art and Architecture building required master carpenters, not just rough laborers, to build the formwork. This was not a cheap or easy style. It was an incredibly demanding and expensive commitment to material truth. Beyond the material, brutalism was a philosophy. Emerging after the devastation of World War II, it was an architecture of idealism and social progress. Governments and institutions used it for social housing, universities, and civic centers because it represented stability, permanence, and a belief in a collective, democratic future. The forms were monumental not to intimidate, but to inspire civic pride. The complex, interlocking geometries, often described as sculptural, were a direct rejection of the bland, glass curtain wall corporate modernism that was taking over. Brutalist buildings were meant to be experienced, with layered walkways, deep shadows, and textured surfaces that changed with the light and weather. They have a tactile quality that is completely lost in photographs. A common misconception is that these buildings are simple concrete blocks, but in reality, they are incredibly complex in their section. The floor plans are often highly articulated, with differentiated spaces for served and servant areas, meaning the main living spaces were clearly separated from the circulation, mechanical, and bathroom course. This was architecture expressing its internal logic on the outside, a principle known as structural honesty. However, this noble philosophy often collided with harsh realities, leading to brutalism's dramatic fall from grace. The first and most practical problem was concrete's inherent vulnerability. It's a porous material, and when exposed to water, the steel rebar inside rusts and expands, causing the concrete to spall and crack in a destructive cycle. Many brutalist buildings, especially those built with cost-cutting measures, began to decay prematurely, giving them a grim, dystopian appearance that reinforced public negativity. The second problem was social. Many large-scale social housing projects, like the infamous Pruitt-Igoe in the US, though not purely brutalist, shared its scale and concrete aesthetic. Plagued by poor maintenance, inadequate funding, and social problems, they became symbols of urban failure. The very permanence of brutalism became a liability, as these immovable objects seemed resistant to change or adaptation. Furthermore, the raw concrete, so celebrated by architects, felt cold and inhuman to the average person living or working within it. The scale could be overwhelming, and the lack of traditional ornament or warmth was often interpreted as hostility. This is a critical lesson for all architects. The end user's perception is as important as the architectural concept. In the digital age, we are witnessing a dramatic reappraisal of brutalism. Why now? Firstly, there's a growing recognition of its historical significance and the need to preserve post-war heritage. Organizations like Docomomo are fighting to save iconic buildings from demolition. Secondly, in our current world of sleek, digitally rendered glass boxes, brutalism offers something tangible and authentic, a sense of weight and reality that feels refreshing. Its raw graphic quality is perfectly suited to the digital realm, making it incredibly popular on platforms like Instagram and TikTok. For contemporary architects, the principles of brutalism are more relevant than ever. The emphasis on raw, honest materials aligns with the sustainable architecture movement's focus on truth to materials and reducing wasteful finishes. Modern concrete technology, with advanced admixtures and sealers, can now achieve the aesthetic without the same durability issues. A workflow secret for architects today is using modern BIM software to design complex, brutalist-inspired forms, and then using CNC milling to create the precise formwork needed for high-quality board-formed concrete, a direct fusion of digital design and tactile materiality. In conclusion, brutalism was never just a style, it was a moral and philosophical stance. It was an attempt to use architecture as a tool for social good, to create a powerful, honest, and monumental environment for a new society. While it failed in many of its social ambitions due to factors beyond pure architecture, its artistic power, structural honesty, and sheer audacity have ensured its enduring legacy. It challenges us to look deeper, to appreciate the beauty in raw materiality, and to remember that architecture is at its most powerful when it has a clear, if sometimes difficult, point of view. As a final note on preservation and context, while we analyze the architectural merit of these structures, it's important to acknowledge that their value is also historical. The decision to preserve or demolish a brutalist building is complex, involving community sentiment, structural integrity, and the cost of adaptation. Our goal is to foster understanding and informed dialogue about this pivotal chapter in architectural history. If this journey into the world of brutalism has changed your perspective, and you want to see us do a detailed case study on a specific building like the Barbican Center or Boston City Hall, please let us know in the comments below. And if you haven't already, subscribe for more deep dives into the stories behind the world's most fascinating architecture.